Welcome back to Speak Out with Christine Jurgen. Today's guest is Bristol Palin. If you're like, Palin, I think I recognize that name. It's probably because her mom ran for office several years ago for the vice president's office, and she was thrust into the limelight because of that. She was 17 years old, she was very young, and then she experienced an unplanned pregnancy at that very delicate time of her life. And we're diving into her unplanned pregnancy and talking about that a little bit, what it's like having a mother who's running for Vice President of the United States of America. We talk about her time on Dancing with the Stars, Teen Mom OG, and Life with Trip, which was a series about her own life. We're talking about what she's up to today and if reality TV is behind her or not. But I enjoyed this conversation. I feel like Bristol is such a wonderful, wonderful woman, and I have a lot to relate to her. Our kids are kind of similar ages. We both experienced an unplanned pregnancy. We both have teenage boys who play football, and it was just fun to chat with her. So without further ado, here we go. Bristol, thank you so much for joining the show today. I am so excited to have you and get a chance to talk to you. I followed you for a while, and I feel like our stories are kind of similar. So this is really exciting to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. So I don't want to talk a ton about your mom because I'm sure people ask you about your mom all the time. But you did have a mother who ran for one of the highest offices in the land. That's got to be
Yes,
kind of crazy, right? I mean, what was that
absolutely.
like having a mom who ran for vice president?
I felt like I feel like it was such a gradual progression of her career. She started as PTA, then she was the mayor of our little town, and then she was the governor. So I feel like it was such a gradual progression that it just felt normal. And like, of course, she'd be running as vice president. So it just felt like a gradual progression.
It's so funny that you say like it felt normal because it's like totally not normal. Like very few people can say that one of their parents ran for office alone, but obviously one of the highest offices. Were you guys close to the McCains, and do you still keep in touch with them at all or anything? What was that kind of like? I always wonder because I feel like, what we've seen lately with Biden and Harris and how, they kind of pushed him out of the election.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
is it just you pick a running mate and that's it? And you don't really have anything in common. You just kind of do what makes you win? Or like, do you actually have friendships with these people?
I never had real friendships with that side. Yeah, there was never anything like real deep, that's for sure. And I've never stayed in touch with anyone on that side since.
That's so interesting to me.
It is interesting. I've never thought about that.
You would think like, I mean, that's a huge thing to do together. So you'd think that
Yes.
there'd be some sort of lifelong, connection, even if not like a close friendship, but maybe a
Yeah.
connection that
And
is
you're in such close quarters, on the campaign trail. It's a good point. I've
totally.
never thought about it.
Yeah, very strange. So you're no stranger to reality TV, obviously. You've been on Dancing with the Stars and have had a couple of other shows that you've been on. You've been on Dancing with the Stars twice, right?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
And you started pretty young. How old were you when you first went on Dancing with the Stars?
I think I had like was turning 19 during it the first time.
So you had a little toddler, essentially,
Yes. Yeah,
when
I
you
was either
experienced.
19 or 20. And yes, Trip was like a year old when I did it. And it was a blast.
What was it like? I mean, did you feel like you were an overnight celebrity kind of thing? I mean, you already were in the limelight a little bit because of your mom, but I mean, I feel like that's much more Hollywood and less politics.
Yeah. I think I didn't really have social media, so I think I was kind of oblivious to a lot of it. It was definitely such a different world coming from Alaska, just polar opposite, very different. But it was fun. There was a lot of good memories that came from it.
So then the different shows that you've been on Teen Mom OG and
Yes.
didn't have that great of an experience from what I've
No.
seen you say. And then you had, what is the other one that you had? You had Life's a Trip.
Yes.
With all of these shows, were you allowed to fully be yourself and like share your beliefs? Or because of your mom's history, did they kind of like tell you not to talk about any of that stuff?
I think Teen Mom OG, they definitely wanted to shed light on like much different things that were just not as important to me. I remember going into Teen Mom OG wanting to talk about my faith, wanting to talk about much different things, but they definitely wanted to focus on the drama. Of course, that's what reality TV is. So it really didn't align with my beliefs.
Yeah, they kind of steer the conversations, I would
Oh,
assume,
yeah.
and, pick and choose what they're going to air.
Create scenarios that never existed. They'll take audio clips and put it with scenes that never were meant to go together. So just the way that that was going, I knew it was not in line with where God wanted me to be, and I just quit real quick.
Totally. And I don't blame you. I can imagine that was probably a very uncomfortable situation to be in. I did an interview. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jubilee. They have a show called Middle Ground that they do. It's like in this uh, a dark room where there's people for something and people against something, and you step forward if they ask a question, and then you communicate. And there was so much that was said that they edit out or they
Yeah.
kind of manipulate, and you watch it later, you're like, no, that's not what I said there. And I
Yeah.
definitely said a lot more. So I've only had very little of that. I can imagine what it's like to have it, all over Hollywood and completely
Yeah.
blasted everywhere.
Just the storylines that they would create were just complete opposite. Not even just like an exaggerated truth. It was like complete opposite of what had actually had happened. And I just could not stand for that any longer. I didn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. So you have a brother, Trig, who
Yes.
has Down syndrome. What do you think about the people who advocate for abortion in instances of Down syndrome?
I think it's just heartbreaking because my little brother is like the most innocent, happiest person on earth. And I think it's just heartbreaking that isn't the statistic like 98% of kids with Down syndrome are definitely in the 90 percentile that they're aborted. I just think it's heartbreaking. And I feel for them because Trig is such a blessing to our family. He's like such light and positive positivity for our family. So it just breaks my heart that other people don't get to experience that.
Yeah, it's really high. And actually, in other countries, I think it's near 100% that all babies with Down syndrome are aborted. And it's definitely devastating. Everybody I've met who has somebody with Down syndrome in their life says it is the biggest joy that they have. And, aside from that, I've heard from people who have said that, the doctor told me that my baby was going to have Down syndrome. Said that I should abort. I chose life, and then the baby didn't have Down syndrome. Not
Yeah.
that either baby is more or less valuable by any means, but doctors are wrong often, and we give this notion that a child with Down syndrome is anything less than you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know that my little brother was going to have Down syndrome until he was born. And there was no chance that it made me love him any less.
Yeah.
I think he's just perfect and created perfectly in God's image. He's just like the light of our entire family.
Oh, I love that so much. So you had an unplanned pregnancy at 17.
Yes.
You were obviously very young. If you could tell your 17-year-old self one thing, what would you say?
It's all going to be okay. Yeah, it's all going to be okay.
And what was going through your mind when you found out that you were pregnant at 17?
I was in disbelief. I didn't think it was real, the positive pregnancy test. I didn't think it was real at all until I heard his heartbeat. And then hearing his heartbeat, like my life changed completely. And I felt like just complete tunnel vision on focusing in on what's important. And I mean, my kids are like my driving force. And I feel like they have given me such a superpower to really focus on what's important.
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't 17 when I got pregnant. I was 20, but same thing. When I heard his heartbeat, I was like, okay, his
Yeah.
life is his life. That's not my life to take. That is a
Yes.
completely separate human. And he's how old now? 15, 16?
He's almost 16. Yeah.
And he's playing football.
Yes.
What are his other interests?
He's an avid hunter. He is a huge hunter. He goes moose hunting all the time. He just got a huge moose this fall. He's really into fishing. He's really into like the outdoors.
That's awesome. It's wild when you think about it. I don't know if you've ever thought about it in this way, but I definitely have, having people who suggested abortion, and I'm sure for you that
Yeah.
may have been something similar. But it's like an entire human being would not be here if you had chosen anything other than
I
life.
know. When I first heard his heartbeat, it was just myself and the doctor, and I was probably about 10 weeks. And the doctor, she asked, she's like, well, what do you want to do about this? I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want to do about this? Like, did you not just hear the same thing that I heard? Like,
Yeah.
that's my baby. That's my child. And I never went back to that doctor there was no question about it. I was going to have my son, and he's been the light of my life ever since.
And even at 17, you had this like maternal instinct to protect that life.
Yes. Yeah. There was no questions asked on it.
So, when it comes to teen pregnancy and unplanned pregnancies, there's a lot of people who have different ideas on how we handle it. Like, what would you say to young girls who are 16, 17, kind of maybe they are in similar shoes, or maybe they're sexually active, maybe they're considering being sexually active? Like, how do we actually reduce teen pregnancy? And, do we look at these girls and say, I was in the same shoes as you, but don't do what I did? How do we, I guess I'm saying, like, how do we fix it? Which is a very big thing, because I think everybody would fix it if they could. But do we say abstinence is the answer? I mean, that's kind of my heart, but what are your thoughts on how we approach this?
I think initially that was definitely my thoughts, because I wish that we could just go back and just look at the Bible and what God says about marriage and families and things like that. But I think that so many people, that just falls on so many deaf ears when we talk like that. I think that, just talking about it and talking openly about it. And I think, obviously God created a man and a woman to have a family and to have that unit forever. That's what's important in life. And I feel like if we just focus more on that and less of just everything is so sexualized, and if we just focus more on like the old school values, maybe that would shed light onto some of these teen pregnancies.
Yeah, I so agree with that, because I feel like there's the demonization of motherhood.
Yes.
Children are called crotch goblins these days, and people make fun of their children for laughs on social media. It's a sexualized culture that we're in. Young women are told to, go to college, rack up debt, climb the corporate
Yes.
ladder. All of these things are anti-family, so to speak, and it turns young women away from doing things the right way. The sexualized
Yeah.
society, but then, oh, but I have to go to college, and oh, I have to like climb the corporate ladder. I have to become a CEO, or nobody's going to view me as successful if I'm just a mom, or if I'm just a wife. People are going to look down on me. Do you feel like that's contributing to what we're seeing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wish it wasn't seen as that way. I hate that it's seen that way, that women just want to be such, boss women. And I hate that mentality, because that's not how God created us to be. And yeah, the sexualization of everything just drives me crazy, because like the marketing technique that they're using, like, oh, sex is so empowering and my body, my choice, all those things, that marketing ploy drives me insane, because that's not empowering at all. That leaves you feeling empty.
Yeah.
And it leaves, so many fatherless households, and just our entire society as a whole. My heart just breaks for that mentality of it all.
No, I completely agree. I feel like kids these days are getting it from every single angle. Like we didn't
Yes.
have social
Yes.
media in the same. I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming.
33.
Okay,
33.
well, I'm a little bit older, but still in my 30s. I'm 37, but I feel like social media wasn't like as big when we were
Yeah.
younger. Like you weren't seeing I mean, there's the movies, of course, that always existed, but it
Well,
wasn't like pushed on us so much.
Yes, and think of the movies that we used to watch as kids compared to the movies that are now, targeted to our kids. Every single TV show, you cannot watch a TV show without there being some sort of kissing scene, something that's like insinuating sex. I hate that for this generation. I cannot stand it, because everything is so sexualized. You can't even watch cartoons without there being something that's insinuating sex or kissing or anything like that. And I hate that for our kids growing up
Totally.
in a world like this.
There's this whole debate over like Disney movies and children's shows that, they need to have, LGBTQ plus characters in them. And I'm like, well, why do we have sexuality at all? Like,
Yes, why is that even discussed with kids?
yeah, why are we having little girls watch, even when it goes back to like Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast, which, are seen as classics. As an adult, I watch them and I'm like, do I really want my 5-year-old watching this? Like thinking about that? I mean, she's 5. Like,
No, I just wish that they would keep sex just out of sight for our kids, out of everything. I wish that we were able to protect our kids, but even like with Disney,
Yeah.
you can't even trust that at all anymore.
yeah. It's Disney, YouTube, all the things.
Yeah,
Apps,
every single
video
avenue.
games, you really can't get away from it. I just watched something kind of related, kind of unrelated. I don't know if you saw it, it was going viral of a kid who plays Roblox.
Yes.
And somebody was able, like, go in a chat room and they were able to, like, this person was able to get the address of the little kid and came to their house. The kid's jumping on a trampoline outside and this guy pulls up in the driveway. And I'm like, how are these like creators of the apps, it goes along with the movies and all these other things, like even thinking it's okay for these kinds of conversations to be having or giving access to adults,
Yeah.
giving access to kids to adult strangers. It's just completely beyond me.
It's mind blowing. And also, too, I feel like there's a lot of responsibility on the parents where their kids are unmonitored on these devices, where these devices are like babysitters for their kids. It's terrible. I saw that Roblox one that you're talking about.
Yeah,
All of it's just awful. I feel like you can't trust kids just on devices because there's just bad avenues for all of that.
totally. While we're on it, what is your thought process? You have your son who is a teenager, and then you have two younger children as well. How old are they?
They are 7 and 8.
7 and 8. Okay, so similar ages to mine. I'm 5 and 8. How do you address social media? How do you address technology as a whole in your house? Phones, video games, all that stuff. Like, are you a tech-friendly household? Did you try to reduce it as much as possible? Like, what is your thought process?
We try to reduce it as much as possible, but it's not completely removed, that's for sure. With my son, he was caught having Snapchat on his phone, so that phone got destroyed, and he had a flip phone for the start of his high school career. So I am not okay with a lot of the social media use. I routinely go through my son's devices and things like that. And then my daughter, she just turned 8 and she did get a cell phone, but we have this app. It's called Bark app. So we can see and monitor everything that she's doing on it. And she doesn't have access to YouTube or most apps. So we definitely monitor the devices in my household.
Yeah, I love that you got a flip phone because I think people think moms like that, like, oh, you're crazy or you're hovering too much or you're going through their devices. And I'm like, they live in my house and they're my child and I'm responsible for their well-being. You're being
Yes.
straight, I'm going through their phone.
Yes.
There is
Absolutely.
no point in time in which I won't go through their phone. We did a gab phone for a period of time, which isn't a
I've heard
flip
that one.
phone, but doesn't have social media, doesn't have internet, none of that stuff. And I remember people thinking like, you're being too strict. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what
I,
you think.
yeah.
Like, your kids are doing things that I don't necessarily approve of, and I'm trying to do the best that I can. But there's definitely apps out there that are amazing for people who, are trying to protect their kids in a tech savvy world. And then, there's different phones like the Gab phone. I'm sure there's more
Yeah.
that have, this protection where parents can feel a little bit more comfortable, especially when you have, for instance, my son is from a previous relationship. And, so when there's the back and forth, you definitely want them to have a phone
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes. And it just makes it a little bit easier, but you still want to be able to protect them. So I
Yeah.
want to rewind a little bit. We're talking about your mom some and you being pregnant at 17. What was your mom's response when she found out that you were pregnant?
Shocked. I think she was definitely shocked. I think initially she was like, well, you guys got to get married, got to figure this out. But my dad was more so like, wait, pump the brakes, like, let's just, focus on this baby first. So initially that was definitely their reaction. And then of course, right when Trip came, everyone's like so in love with Trip. He's the youngest grandkid and, everyone's just so obsessed with him. So at first it was shock for sure. And just figuring out, the logistics of welcoming him into our lives.
And I'm assuming you, like, after that initial shock, you probably felt support from them,
Yes.
like as we're going to do this together as a family
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. And there was no question, like I was going to have my son. There was no, what are we going to do about this? From anyone in my family. Everyone was very supportive of that, which
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for.
I saw, so I get to like do deep dives on everybody that I have on the show. And sometimes I feel like totally creeper stalker status because I have to look up everything. I mean, as much as I can to get some good questions out and kind of know a little bit about everybody beyond what I already know. And I just happened to click on an interview that your mom did. and it had nothing to do, like, I wasn't even researching you at that point, but it was, something YouTube suggested me after the fact. And it was your second pregnancy that she was talking, I forget who she was talking to, I forget which interview. And the interviewer was trying to almost, it felt like pin her in a corner a little bit of saying, like a second pregnancy, like maybe this isn't what you wanted. And she just responded with such grace and like, we're really excited to have a baby girl.
Yeah.
I am so excited to be a grandmother times two, however she phrased it. But it was so beautiful because I think a lot of times people want to instill fear or say, like it's this awful thing that you got pregnant at 17 or I got pregnant at 20. And did we do things the right way? No. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
reason logically and biblically that God says, get married, then have kids. It just, completely makes sense to do it that way. But at the point of being pregnant, the baby's already here. We've
Mhm.
already had unfortunately, premarital sex, like, and we're already, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same. I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for you, but I judged myself hardcore. I had
Yeah.
all of the emotions. I was scared. I was fearful. I was embarrassed. There was a little
Mhm.
bit of excitement as well. I experienced every emotion under the sun. And, but at that point of conception or finding out that you're pregnant, there's already a baby there. And we know that
Mhm.
that baby is inherently valuable. And we know that God knew them before he formed us or before he formed them in the womb. And I just always love when I see parents kind of rally around, their child in that sense of, we're excited. Life is life and we're excited. And the first thing my dad said to me when he found out and I was terrified was, well, looks like I'm going to be a grandpa.
Aw.
And I'm sure he cried himself to sleep. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure there was lots of
Yeah.
disappointment and shock and all of that I didn't see. And, eventually he had some conversations with me. But like that initial response was something that was so powerful to me. And it brought me back when I saw your mom saying that, because it seemed like she was really supportive of you
Yeah.
and your sweet babies.
Yeah, she's definitely like such a mama bear. She will protect us till the end of time. And it has meant the world that they've been so supportive. And not only my, teenage pregnancy, but also too when I was pregnant for the second time out of wedlock. So my parents have always been very supportive and there for me and for their grandkids.
So you're in Texas and
Yes.
is she still in Alaska?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
guys super close still, or does the
Yeah, we see
distance?
each other. We see each other like every couple of months. I'm going to Alaska tomorrow, so I'll be seeing my family then.
Are you going to take the kids with you when you go and like make
Yes.
it a family affair?
Yeah, we're gonna go for moose hunting, and my kids are gonna be out of school for 10 days. We're like the worst parents here with them missing school constantly because we're going back and forth quite a bit.
I mean, honestly, I feel like, especially in the elementary age, for the little ones, when you're missing school, maybe when they get a little older, it gets a little bit
Yeah.
tricky. But I mean, come on. If we can't help our kids learn what they're learning in school because they're missing a few days of school, then there's probably a problem. But
Yeah.
I don't ever
I feel like
consider it that
it's
big of a deal.
so much more important that they're going to visit family and
Yeah,
see
they
different
need to
parts of
have,
the world.
that life experience. School's always going to be there.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
you're a real estate agent now, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
is that like, do you think that that's what you're going to be doing for the foreseeable future? Or is there more in store as far as like reality TV? Or have you shut the door on that?
I don't know. I feel like I'm too boring for reality TV. There would be like no storyline ever, because I'm just very boring over here. But no, real estate's been something that I've been passionate about for a long time. Bought my first property when I was 19. It was like a foreclosed condo. And I've been buying and selling and flipping properties, and I've got rental properties ever since. So it just felt natural to be in real estate, and that's
Yeah.
what I do full time.
From everybody here from who, has any sort of money whatsoever, they're like, real estate. You need to get in real estate. But there's like that thing where you have to like, if you're flipping or buying and selling, that's a big chunk to bite off to kind of
Yes.
get in there initially. Were you fearful doing flips or were you just like, no, I got this?
I don't know why, just anything real estate related, I've always just like been very ballsy about and been able to figure out and been very successful at it. So I love everything real estate wise. I love investing. I love even doing the projects myself. I am just obsessed with everything real estate.
Well, it has been such a joy to be able to talk to you and pick your brain a little bit. I want to end on one question. If you could say something to a woman in an unplanned pregnancy, what would you say? You can take your time if you need to, but what is something that you would say to her who maybe
I,
is feeling a little fearful?
I would tell her that everything is going to be okay. I would tell her that this baby's life is so worth it, that it is going to change her life for the better, no matter what the circumstance is. Because I know I've been through hard circumstances and walked through pregnancies by myself, and it's going to be okay. And that baby is going to be the light of your life.
Amen. Bristol, thank you so much for joining. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm so excited that you were willing to share your story.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.